Today we're joined by Kenneth Clay of Corinthian Capital Group, Bob Nolan of Halyard Capital, and Steve Milner of Gen 2 Fund Services. Gentlemen, welcome to ProCap today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you,
Thank
David.
you.
We're talking about things you'd wish you'd known before launching a private equity firm. We have two private equity firm founders here. And of course, Steve, you help many firms get launched, and so I'm fascinated to hear your perspectives. Let's talk about the most important aspect of building a successful private equity firm, and that's getting the people right. When you are a newer firm, either a spinout or a de novo firm, you have to attract talent to the firm. You can't do it all yourself. But Bob, how difficult is it for a newer, or I guess less developed private equity firm to attract the right kind of talent, given the many other places that these successful and talented people could work?
Well, just as in the case of deal sourcing, when you're a new fund, you do rely on the network that you've already developed over time, wherever you've originally spent your time. And so it's somewhat true as well in attracting talent. You're relying on your network to help introduce talent to you that may come from different sources. It may come from investment banks. It may come from other private equity funds, God forbid, even a law firm. Mm-hmm. Can I say that? Or accounting practice or consulting practices. But the fact of the matter is, you're right. You're not going to go compete with the largest brand names for those who desire the largest brand name, but for those who want to come and be part of an original effort and probably gain more traction at the original stage as a meaningful member of the team than they might at a large institution. That's what you're selling them. You're selling them the entrepreneurial promise.
Kenneth, what was it like founding Corinthian Capital Group? No one knew what Corinthian was before, as you were forming it, and you presumably met with a lot of younger professionals who maybe were thinking about working at a place like Blackstone. And what led to them being interested in possibly working at Corinthian?
Well, I think it was just what Bob had mentioned, the chance to get in early. There's an old adage that the one position that you can never be promoted to is founding partner. And for younger professionals, I think there's no substitute for being in early. And so I think as investors, even the deal professionals are risk averse. And so they have to weigh the prospects of going to a very large firm where they're really never going to run it in all likelihood. They may not even be important, but they have so much under management that they can have a very nice livelihood versus creating and building something and being, as Bob mentioned, much more influential. And we found that there was a fairly clear division between the people that wanted to do so-called banking on the buy side with big firms, or they wanted to get involved with something entrepreneurial. And frankly, if you get the right talent as those early hires come in, it's just critical and so helpful in building the firm.
Mm-hmm. So just a quick follow-up question. So you did have interviews with some people who you could tell they were averse to the risks of a younger firm such as yours and didn't want to take on that risk?
Absolutely. Yeah, we ended up trying to hire a couple of folks that ultimately went to other firms and hopefully enjoyed success. But we ended up also getting some really terrific people, all of whom are still with us today, some 8 or 9 years later.
Young folks today, especially talented folks, have many options. And I think, as my colleagues correctly stated, whether you're starting a private equity firm, whether you're starting a technology firm, whether you're starting an administration firm, some folks are going to be attractive to a large firm name, and others, I think, have more of an independent entrepreneurial bend and want to join along in the journey.
Setting up economic alignments in a new firm is very important. What was that process like, Kenneth, in getting it right? Was that a pretty intense process, a discussion among not only your partners but the newer employees?
I think it's an intense discussion, really, with each fund, and no matter where you are, really capable, smart people know their value, and they want to get paid. And so it is a little tricky. Really talented people will cost you more than you maybe anticipate. And as a founder, you had better be prepared to compensate them fairly relative to their peer group, and also in exchange for taking some risk, or they're going to go elsewhere. And so some people scrimp on the talent side and want to really maintain as much of the economics for themselves as they can. And I think at Corinthian we've tried to be much more democratic in attracting and retaining great people and spreading that around, But it's like beauty, you know, the sort of the fairness of the whole thing is in the eye of the beholder. But I will say that I'm more empathetic maybe than I used to be as to how hard it is to be in that seat and to balance those competing priorities.
Bob, as someone who, I guess, disassociated your own organization from a larger organization, did you spend a lot of time on the economic alignment as an independent company, and was that challenging?
Absolutely, I did. And by the way, the institutional marketplace will ask you about it. So I'm in agreement with Kenneth. The more democratic, the better the result. Now, look, there's a clear paper for performance element in compensation. There's both the element of what they're delivering today and what you expect them to deliver into the future. But what binds everyone together is the notion that there's a fairness principle. And that principle gets tested right out of the gate. And so we spent a lot of time on it. And it's not only just the pure economics, there's the management company ownership, which, by the way, is both, you know, positive and negative. So I'm always sort of amused how people spend so much time on this issue. But there is recognition in owning the management company, and people want to be recognized for their contribution. So as I say, it's a natural tension in business to begin with, but I think as you're forming, it's the foundation layer for your success.
One of the things that's very interesting to me is we get calls all the time from Kenneth's and Bob's talking about what are other firms doing in terms of how do they allocate the carry points. That's a hot question. And so one of the things we do annually is we do a benchmark. In our firm, we take every client that we have, and to the extent we have information elsewhere, we put a composite together. That's a hot piece of paper. It's a very, I think our clients use it as a good reference point to see where they are in the market. And I think it's very helpful, but it is a very relevant data point as folks build out their team.
And of course, the investors care about it as well, right? They're performing due diligence on whether or not a firm is going to blow up because there's not a good distribution of those carry points, right?
And I'm sure my colleagues who deal with that daily can address that better, but I know one of the items on the checklist deals with, you know, how points are allocated, and it also starts to drive the dialogue regarding succession planning. So it's a much bigger discussion.
Absolutely. You've touched the point, which is the institutional investor will ask to see the carry point distribution. They have their own formula for what they think is appropriate. And as you said, whether people are designated a key man at the outset and how you succeed from that position is critical to the future of the organization.
That's absolutely right, because if they do all of the work to get comfortable with the organization, they'd like that to be prospectively a 2, 3, 4 fund run where they've got a body of knowledge that they can then extend to future funds. And so even if you're doing a great job, but the firm is not going to have longevity, that's a huge strike against you.
Gen2 is a leading independent private equity administrator. We have over $65 billion of capital under administration, making us one of the largest independent non-bank administrators globally. We deliver a platform to our clients, a platform that consists of people, process, and technology. Think about us as the people who prepare your capital call letters, distribution notices. We prepare financial statements. We compute performance metrics, IRRs, multiples. And lastly, we track the preferred return, compute the waterfall, and the carried interest. Our objective is to enable our clients to deliver to their limited partners best-in-class reporting, while at the same time enabling their organization to really focus on their investment portfolio.